And then I just have one question about being in the vortex and staying in the vortex. Like, what are, I don't know,
Well, as our explanation to all of you has evolved over time, the reason that we began talking about the existence of the vortex is because we wanted you to find a way of accepting the progress of your creation before you could see the physical evidence of it. A woman the other day was talking about how she wanted $100,000 so she could travel. And we wanted her to understand that there was so much more that had gone into all of that long before the money would show up. So by the time an idea of something that you want is realized by you, there's so much momentum that it's like a sure thing that once you realize you want it, that it's going to come about. So much has already happened before, but most people don't realize that. They think a desire that hasn't manifested is far, far, far away. But a desire that hasn't manifested has all of this momentum of this vortex. And so over time, our explanation to you has evolved too, because we were saying, get into the vortex, get into the vortex, get into the vortex. And now we think that it is easier for you to understand. And we also said, sometimes you're in and sometimes you're out and sometimes you're in. It's not like a college degree where once you get your diploma, it's yours forevermore. It's a vibrational equivalency test. You're in alignment or you're not. But we have found that it is more effective to say to you, so here's this vortex, what's your relationship with it? Are you in the receiving mode of it? Because if you're in the receiving mode of this vortex, then there will be a smooth transfer of the vibrational frequency of the vortex into your mind, into your ideas, into your reflexes, into your impulses, into your rendezvous. Don't you ever wonder how thoughts turn to things? Well, that's how. These thoughts gather a lot of momentum, but if you haven't gathered the momentum that your creations have gathered, then you're not going to be in the receiving mode, and you're not going to match up with them, and you're going to keep yearning for them and hoping for them, but you're not going to be believing them and knowing them, you see. So the way you maintain a better relationship with your vortex, we like that way of saying it better. The way you maintain a better relationship with your vortex is by caring about how you feel. And when you touch the hot stove, acknowledge that it's hot and try to find a thought of relief. In our analogy, the way you take your hand from the stove is by saying something to yourself that makes it less painful.
Be aware of what I'm thinking.
Be aware of what you're thinking and try to find a thought that soothes you in some way. And usually that means find a more general thought. You're usually too specific. You're usually more specific than you are ready to be. So if you step into a more general place and you just continue to practice it. It's a lot for us to ask of you to want to feel good, but that is the homework. You have to want to feel good. You have to want to feel good enough that you're willing to acknowledge when you don't and try to find a thought that feels a little better. And the best plan, or the best process, is to, when you first wake up, acknowledge that you do feel good, unless you do that thing you do that causes it to diminish. Because in the same way that this stove is hot and we want you to try to find a less hot thought, when you wake up you feel here, and we want you to try to maintain that thought rather than being willing to dip down into the thoughts that don't feel so good. Because there's a tendency to wake up. Esther, once we began talking about when you sleep, your momentum subsides. And so when you wake up, it's a whole new beginning. And you have the potential of supporting or maintaining that higher emotion or that higher vibration when you first wake up than at any other time during the day. And so Esther would wake up and she would say, oh, I'm awake, it's a new day. And for a few days she felt a sort of tension to maintain that. Like, don't think, don't think, don't think, don't think, don't think, don't think, don't think. Or don't remember, but just the awareness that it is a new day. And so Esther has learned, if she'll get right into it, the sooner she turns music on in the house, the better the day goes. The sooner she brushes her teeth, the better the day goes. There are just some things that once you do it, you just naturally feel better. So just keep doing the things that feel better, thinking the thoughts that feel better, remembering the things that feel good. In other words, just tend to your vibration, care about feeling good. And before you know it, you'll be so accustomed to this high-flying vibration that when you're not there, the slightest thought will feel like Chainsaw Massacre on your hand. The slightest negative dip will just feel terrible. You'll just get so you cannot cope in those negative emotions at all. Just having a negative thought about someone's like machine gunning them down. Perhaps You should have been warned on the disclaimer that you signed coming in that you can't go back from this. Once you know this, you can't go back. That once you sit in a room like this and your vibration rises to the degree that your inner being is pulsating, you'll never be happy again unless you're there. Sorry, there was no warning about that. You can't go back. And so that's what makes us never worry about you. We know that once you taste it, you'll crave it. Because that's where your inner being is, and that's who you are, and that's what you want. And who wouldn't choose clarity over confusion? Who wouldn't choose happiness over sadness, or sureness over uncertainty, or thrill over depression? In other words, of course it's what you want, you see. So you just take it a little bit at a time, stand next to the horse for a while, let it breathe its happiness in your direction. Lean on it if it'll let you, then climb on.